Today, YOB will be reading from Robear and the Reaper by Tim Stegaheis, where a series of metaphysical misadventures leads to a years-long search for the king of the necromancers. Enjoy. Chapter 4. Before they could reach the government-run facility for magic and research, they were blocked by a crowd. The people had come to watch two steam dandies square off in a duel. The young men had portable steam generators on their backs and handheld pistol jets, which they aimed at each other menacingly. The machines on their backs chugged and hissed and sputtered and looked dangerous. The air stank of smoke and steam. The action started suddenly and unexpectedly. One of the men pulled a small lever on his hip, and a steam whistle on his back generator gave a loud blast, making everyone jump. While his opponent was reorienting himself, the man pointed his pistol at him and fired. The opponent was quicker than expected and jumped aside, then fired his own pistol, striking the first man's right arm. The burned man dropped his pistol and jumped back. His leather sleeve was puckered and blistered. Snatching up his pistol again, the burned man tried to fire his pistol at his opponent, but fired too soon and hit the man in his well-shielded legs. His opponent shuffled over to one side and fired a well-aimed jet at the man's generator. The machine screeched, and a wide fan of steam escaped through a crack in the tank. "I must withdraw," shouted the man. "No steam." "You will leave town," replied his opponent. "You lose." The escaping steam had diminished to a hot drizzle now as the two men backed away towards their seconds. The men around the winner shouted their congratulations as the sheriff placed handcuffs on the man's wrist. The loser was similarly bound by a deputy. "Dueling is illegal, no matter what the cause," stated the sheriff to the crowd. "Now go home." The crowd quickly dispersed, and the heroes continued on to their goal. The building was dark and intimidating. The last blimpful of magicians had just left for the night, and a stoic watchman stood guard at the roof door. Their timing was good. Robear's magic sense told him that the remaining living beings were all on the upper floors. No one was in the basement except for two non-human guardians. If they could get in and get out before any living beings went into the secret cellar, they could avoid a major battle. They had found a solution for Torrent's inability to pass through shadow and get her and Alina into the building. Alina simply left Torrent's form, and as they were now both insubstantial, they just glided into the room where Mama and shadow creatures had entered before. However, Torrent's nice dress and axe were left behind. Alina informed Robear that Torrent could not exist on Earth for long in this state. Once inside, the feel of evil and powerful magic was oppressive, even to those who had used magic in life. The walls throbbed with power, and the very air reeked of evil. Alina was silenced by the intensity and made no comment when Robear made magic signs of protection for them all. They tried to ignore the ugly brown stains that plastered the walls. They opened the door and moved into a central hallway. The first room they investigated was clearly used for human sacrifice and to press them. Fortunately, it had not been used recently. They scrubbed or broke all the evil symbols and drew crosses and pentacles on all the surfaces to negate some of the power held there. They moved to the room radiating the greatest evil and cautiously entered. This room had paintings of people in torment hung on the walls of black plaster. At first they thought they were just paintings to celebrate pain and torment until they looked closer at them. The images were too clear and lifelike, and some were moving slightly. A tragic answer came from Mama Nettie's shadows, and revealed that these were people, trapped in the fabric of a twisted alternate dimension. None of the group had ever encountered a spell like this, and they knew of no way to release the tormented beings in the painting. The dark evil magic circle in the middle of the floor defied scrubbing, and even scraping to remove it. So they moved on. There was still no sign of the dark practitioners returning. The third room was a storage room containing myriad potions, spell components, cursed objects, and vile materials of all descriptions. Robear's Scratch Reaper was able to open a hole into a void space, a trash receptacle. They busied themselves pushing, throwing, or gingerly scooping all the supplies into the hole. The threat of being contaminated forced them to be cautious. Then the hole was carefully closed. The room seemed to shrink after all was done. Several chunks of plaster fell from the ceiling. They moved back into the hallway. The next room was a library of ancient books and scrolls. It also was where the two guardians of the facility were napping. Two demons woke and began using spells to capture and hold the intruders. Fortunately, between Mama and Robear, they had far more demons, although this was becoming a messy fight. That was when Torrin stood forward of the group, spread her arms wide, and a fantastic light burst forth. Ruth and Nobody had to dodge out of the room, and the Shadow Master's demons returned to within them, complaining bitterly. The two demons cringed and withdrew into a corner, defeated. The light subsided, and the room became neutral. Not evil, not holy. The books, on the other hand, were still reeking of evil and would soon recontaminate the room. The two demons were released back into whatever hell they had been summoned from, and did not return. Robear's and Mama's Scratch Reapers demanded that the books and scrolls be turned over to Death himself for study. They might hold clues as to where they might find the necromancer. Alina refused to allow Torrin to touch such material, and Ruth and Nobody could not assist. So Robear and Mama stacked the books carefully in the center of the room. A simple circle was drawn on the floor, and the Scratches were preparing to transport the books into Death's office when Robear had an idea. Could not Death release the beings trapped in those paintings? He said. Only into Death, replied Mama Scratch. Far better having Death than to suffer the torments they have now, said Robear. Very well, said Mama Scratch. Add them to the stacks. Soon the paintings were being carefully placed on top of the stacks of books. The faces in the paintings seemed to plead with their eyes for help. The Scratches began their chant to transport the books to Death's office. Alina got Torrin down on her knees to pray, and true to his word, Robear got down with them. Mamanetti also joined Alina in prayer, and Nobody got down near them and imitated their actions as best he could. Ruth walked off to a corner and sat with her back stiff, facing away from them. As soon as the Scratches' chant was complete and the stacks were gone, an inrush of air could be plainly felt. The building groaned and shook. When the prayer was finished and the last Amen was said, the building took to shaking in earnest, and large pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Robear looked up and saw that the ceiling was cracking and breaking up. Get Torrin to safety, Robear said to Alina. We'll catch up to you. Robear's demons rejoined him, and his Scratch said, We should Shadowgate out of here. This place will soon be no more. I agree, said Robear. Ruth, Nobody, Mama, back to the overhang where we first passed to enter the building. Hurry! They ran to the hallway as it was darker than the rooms. Just then the door opened at the other end of the hallway. There stood a man dressed in black robes and holding onto the door frame. He must have just come to enter the cellar as they were finishing their prayer. He looked with malice at the group fleeing the library. Shadowy figures behind him desperately held onto the walls. Everything seemed to be falling apart. What have you done? The man in black shouted. You! Not slowing their flight, they passed through a shadow corner and emerged back in the street without harm. The nearby building groaned, and sounds of internal collapse could be heard. A steam line burst, and the sound was like the building crying in pain as it shuddered. Torrin stepped from behind a pile of refuse, back in her nice dress, and they turned to go, only to find themselves facing a startled group of rare night travelers who had apparently witnessed them materialize from the shadow. Robear quickly recalled his time with the circus performers. Yes, folks, he said, this is just a sample of the miracles you will see at the Bijou Theater this coming weekend. See tricks, see freaks, and see the wonders of the Orient, brought here for your entertainment. Don't miss it! They all bowed and quickly departed. As they made their way through seldom used alleyways and walled streets, Mamma caught up with Robear. "Do you suppose we fooled them back there?" she inquired. "I doubt it," returned Robear, "unless they were drunk. But maybe it will cause them doubt long enough for us to get out of the city. I'm certain that the blimps of the magic detectors will be here quickly, so let's not waste any time getting clear." Soon enough they were dodging through scattered country estates and making their way to the abandoned school. They used their accustomed entry through a break in the surrounding fence and up to the back door, which Robear had rigged to remain unlocked. Once inside the comparative safety of the school, they all felt secure and would have breathed a sigh of relief, except, of course, they did not breathe. Alina addressed Robear. "You saved the souls of those people out of the goodness within you. You did not have to do that. It was charity. Very commendable." "I did what I did because I thought it needed to be done," replied Robear. "Report on it however you choose." "Did you notice that the cursed rooms collapsed after we said our prayer?" inquired Alina. "I think that they were collapsing because the power of the books was gone," said Robear. "That much energy pressed out on the walls had to affect the foundations, but it certainly could not hurt to follow it up with a prayer to help clean out the presence of demon magic." "You still did not admit that God was helping us," said Alina. "How do you suppose all that was accomplished so easily, and none of us was hurt?" "Okay, if it pleases you," sighed Robear. "God was helping, but death is my boss, and I'm sure that he had some say in it. I would continue to answer to him first." "Heathens!" interjected Alina, to no one in particular. "I like it when you make her mad," said one of his shadows in his ear. "She is a pimple and a snob." "She is on our team," said Robear, "whether we like it or not." "Perhaps," said the demon, "but I do not like her holier-than-thou attitude." Robear stopped. "Hey," he said, "she's an angel. You're a demon. She is holier-than-thou." "All right," admitted the demon, "but I don't have to like her attitude about it." "True enough," said Robear, and started walking again. They were thus preoccupied when they entered the basement meeting room that they customarily used to pass the daylight hours. So they didn't sense the presence of strange men in their sanctuary until a sphere of energy surrounded and confined them. Even Ruth and Nobody were trapped.